I got to be on the floor when Michael Jordan played. I passed the ball to Shaquille O'Neal during a practice once. I drove players' cars backstage because it was a circular driveway.
Today on Time We Discuss, I want to welcome S.E. Schroeder, and it's time to discuss what it's like or what it was like working in security. S.E. Schroeder, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be fun.
Absolutely. This is, like you said, going to be a great time. Now,
Right.
admittedly, when I think security, I think mall security. I think people just kind of meandering about, moseying about, more than likely nothing exciting going on. But you have some really exciting stories to share with what
I
you've
do.
encountered.
So I actually work security for the Target Center Arena in Minneapolis where the Timberwolves played. So there were concerts and like wrestling events and like all sorts of things that were happening in that arena. And I got to be there during those events. And then also like there were some fun things that happened when there were only two people in the building and I was one of the two. So yeah, it was a really interesting experience, a great college job that I just needed money as a college student and it worked with my schedule. So I was like, why not? Also, there are some cute guys that were on the security team. So like that was definitely a motivation to stay there longer.
One of the
Yeah.
questions I typically ask is like, what of the perks, unexpected perks that goes along with the job? And that sounds like that is one of them.
That was one of them. It was great. Like they did the event security and I was actually a building guard. So there were two people on security at all times. There's a guy in the command center who was like watching the cameras to make sure everything was good. And then I was the building guard. So I was walking around the entire arena and we had checkpoints and I had to make sure doors were locked and there was no one hiding in the bathrooms and like weren't any like homeless people on the skyway. So things like that. Like that was my job.
Talk to me about how you actually got started doing this job. Because when I think of security, I think someone has to have some kind of legitimate experience. So, how did you actually get started doing this?
A friend told me that she had done it as well. And I was like, that sounds awesome. Like, who can say they're security? Like, I don't, it was just like a fun thing. So I applied and I was like, this is great. This is really cool. And they needed more female security guards because, like, for instance, there were a couple of things that happened in a female bathroom. And I was the only one that was able to go in. There were like female EMT people that were able to go in, but they needed security. And I was the only female security guard. So that was pretty cool.
So, I'm
Not
assuming.
cool. Like that experience was not cool, but it was cool to be the only female security guard.
So, I'm assuming that was the one instance where you said you had to crawl under a stall to get to someone.
I did. So there was a woman passed out in a like passed out drunk in a stall, and she'd been going to the bathroom. So she passed out while she was in the stall going to the bathroom, and the EMTs were like not brave enough to crawl under the stall to unlock it. So I heard this call. It was during an event, obviously. Like I don't remember if it was a Timberwolves game or what, but I heard this call like we need a security guard to the female bathroom. We need a female security guard, which is like they were calling me. So I got over there as fast as I could, and there were like 8, 10 people standing outside the bathroom, not sure what to do. And they're like, there's this woman passed out. We need to get her like out. The EMTs need to check her. And I was like, okay. So I laid on my back and I closed my eyes and I like reached up under the stall door and unlocked the door, crawled back under and said, she's all yours. And I left like let the EMTs take care of it because that was not my job description.
That is fun. That is really really fun. And I remember from what I read before, you talked about there was an instance where you clotheslined someone as well. So let's talk about that one.
I, I did. That was instinct and probably not the right move, but there was like this. It's like too much alcohol is a problem for a lot of people. But there was this guy that like wanted to go from one area where his ticket was, and there was like an open gate, so he was trying to run into this other section, and he was gonna try to run past me. I was sitting there, like I had the security uniform, the white shirt and the collar and black pants and walkie, like all the things, and he was running, so I just stuck my arm out, and he went right over it. Like, I was talked to about that move. Like, right? Like that wasn't the right one, but it was really funny. And then he stood up and he was like moshing with empty chairs and it was weird. It was
big insecurity. It's not necessarily the glamorous of being walking the mall, for instance. There are definitely other instances where things can be a little bit more exciting, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, like I did have to kick a drunk guy out of the Skyway once. In Minnesota, they have inside walkways for like to go all around the city. And so there was a drunk guy sitting out there, and he was trying to tell me that because he was a vet, he deserved to sit there. Like he paid for the freedom to sit in that walkway. And I was like, I'm sorry, sir, you have to leave. And he did. There's another instance where there's a very large man, very large, like 400, 500 pounds, and he broke one of the toilets while he was sitting on it. So, um, and that was like, we felt bad because he was so embarrassed. He knew why it was broken, right? But like, there was like sewage stuff, like toilet stuff all over the floor. And like, it was definitely like, there were moments where it was like, oh, why did I choose this job? I'm not sure.
Talk to me about the training that you received prior to actually starting. Because, like that, you're a college student, you
Right,
decide, oh, this could be a cool job. Friend recommends it, cute guys. Let's check this out. Talk to me about
right.
the training that they gave you before you actually started doing the job.
I remember sitting in a room with everyone and they were talking through different terms, like just the difference between like assault and battery, and like, do you know the difference? They told us our job was just to look and be the eyes, because there were also like off-duty police officers that volunteered their time, and then the perk for them was that they got to be at the events. So if we saw something in a purse, like a knife or a weapon, which I never did, we were supposed to call the police on the radio because they were on our same channel. Or if like there was a gang fight in the lobby that actually was on the news at one point, and I was there, and I was gonna like go try to stop something, and one of the other security guards grabbed me by my belt and pulled me backwards, and um, he's like, nope, we're just gonna call that in. I was like, all right, that's what we're doing.
How often does that happen where working security, you are working in tandem with law enforcement? You're not really the one that's really expected to go after the bad people, so to speak. How often does that happen where you're working in tandem like that?
Every single event there were officers there. So every single event, when it was just like when there was nothing else going on in the building and it was just the security guard, like the building guard and the command center person, then there were no police. So it was just us making sure something was like everything was safe. But then, during the events, the police were there. And actually, one time, this guy Andy, he's a canine officer that I got to know pretty well, when he would come in to train his dog. But he was undercover one day. So I remember walking around one of the concourses during an event, and I saw him in this brown flannel, and I did this little like, oh, okay. And he's like, don't blow my cover type thing. So I didn't say anything to him. I just had to pretend like I didn't know him, but it caught me off guard a little bit because I had not seen him before the event started.
Let's talk about education briefly. Because like that, you were still in college at this point. Were
Right.
you studying criminal justice? Were you pre-law? Were you anything even remotely related to security?
Not at all. Like there was no security, anything related. Now I'm a writer, and so I draw from different situations that happened while I was a security guard. And it was the security job was training for me as an author to teach me different things. So it worked out backwards a little bit in that aspect.
Let's talk more generally about that. How often do you incorporate your life experiences? I'm probably assuming most authors do this, but how often do you incorporate your own life experiences into making your novels?
There's a lot of crossover because it's hard to write about what you don't know. And so a lot of times when you're thinking about something, trying to come up with even a name, you come up with a name. It's like I named one of my characters the other day, and it was the name of something I'd watched on like the character of someone on TV, right? So it's just like your everyday life just kind of creeps into the writing. Like I said, Andy, that canine officer, used to train his canine in the boiler rooms. He had this scent that smelled like a bomb, and he was training his dog to recognize, to find the bomb and recognize it and alert him. There are all these different pieces, and I'd love to tell you more, but I'm excited to like put that in my novel. So we'll have to do another one of these when it's in my novel, and I can share that secret once it's in a book.
That would be lovely. That would be lovely. Okay,
Yeah.
so talking about that for a second, the canine doing the training, what other trainings did you yourself participate in, if any? Were there any like not mandates, but I'm going to go in that direction where it's like you're required to take additional training to help better you as a security person, or not so much?
Not so much. It was like, okay, go do your thing. It was I was a college kid enjoying all the perks. I got to be on the floor when Michael Jordan played. I passed the ball to Shaquille O'Neal during a practice once. Like that made me feel really lame because the ball like dribbled or rolled toward the bleachers and I was there. So I picked it up and I threw it to him. And I was so worried that I wasn't even going to be able to throw it the distance to him, like just really embarrassing. I drove players' cars backstage because it was a circular driveway. So they would pull in, the Timberwolves pulled in, and I was insured to drive their vehicles, but they were not insured to drive each other's vehicles. So we would get into these cars and we would have to like move them forward so that other players could get out and around. And like, first of all, they're tall, right? I'm 5'8", 5'9", and they're a lot taller and you don't move the pedals. Like I was so afraid to like mess up anything in the car. So I'd get in these cars and I would like reach for the gas pedal. And it was also really funny to see what they were listening to get pumped up for their game because there's like some hardcore rap, which kind of expect, but then there was like some symphony music, like strings orchestra. I was like, what the heck is going on in here? Like it was just not what you'd expect from an NBA player, but okay.
Maybe it's all queued up for when the game is over to kind of bring them back down a little bit.
Ooh, yeah.
So when you started working this particular gig, were you brought in through like a third party agency that you were then contracted out to different events? Or is it you worked just at the stadium and whatever was going on there, you were there for that? How did that work?
There were event guards that were there at the arena that were only there for the events. And we were all contracted by the Target Center Arena. So it wasn't like outsourcing job. We were there. And so if I happened to be the building guard during an event, then I just got to be there and walk around and do the thing. So that was kind of cool. And then the other times it was like, you just walk around the empty building. And sometimes I brought rollerblades and like rolled around the concourses instead. We had to go downstairs for some of the checkpoints though, so that got a little dicey. There's a game called camera tag. We used to like the building guard and the command center guard would play camera tag. So the building guard would like try to run around really fast and like see if they could get caught by or like not get caught by the command center guy. So that was kind of fun. I got to go on the catwalk as well. That was 10 stories up. And so there were some concerts and some like wrestling events and NBA games where I was standing in the catwalk, just looking down at the things going on. It was pretty darn cool job.
I think I told this in a previous episode where I'm terrified of heights. And in a previous life, I was hanging microphones above a stage and I was about 40 feet up. And at one point just like froze and found it next to impossible to move because I was just high in my head, so high up and just terrified. Eventually I was able to, get up and get out there, but heights, not for me.
Yeah. Well, me either, which is the crazy thing, because that was 10 stories at least. And I was walking right above it. And I just thought I was the coolest thing in the world, being able to like the coolest seat in the world for a game, just be able to like look down and be above the Megatron thing, like the Jumbotron. Yeah.
We touched on this earlier, but other unexpected perks, did you ever get like comp tickets or anything like that for different events? Yeah.
Yes. Concerts. I went to Evanescence for free. I had free Timberwolves games. So like if there were ever extra tickets laying around, they would offer them to the security guards and first come, first serve. So that was one of my late husband's and I's first date was Evanescence. So,
I bet that was really, really cool.
It was. He was pretty impressed. I'm like, yeah, I got us some Evanescence tickets. Why not?
So I'm going to take this a step farther. What about like backstage opportunities? Do you ever, if you because okay. So the security guards that are like at front of stage for a concert, we'll say, is that in-house security, or do they belong to do they travel with the musicians? Are you able to like, hey, can I get back? How does that work?
There were interactions between us and especially the NBA players, probably the most because we are around. I think that like the concert guys had their own security. And we had part of our training, you asked about that earlier, was do not ask for an autograph. That is an automatic firing. So we were never allowed to be like, oh my God, just Kevin Garnett, can I have your autograph? Because he was there to work and it was our job to work. So get the job done. Don't bother the players. So I didn't get a single autograph in the 2 years that I worked there. But I mean, just being able to talk to the players. Okay, so one day, Kevin Garnett forgot his gym shoes. Now, I don't know how a basketball player forgets gym shoes, but maybe it was just like he wanted a certain pair or something. So his sister brought his gym shoes that he wanted to the command center, and I had to go down to bring, like, I went down to their gym and I brought Kevin Garnett his gym shoes. And it was a super short conversation. I just happened to like go in and hand him, and he's, thank you, you're welcome. Like, you know, just the typical. And I wanted to ask for an autograph, not allowed. And then, but that moment, actually, my late husband, like I said, we were dating at that time, and he had brought me dinner. So he was let into the command center, and he was looking at the cameras. And the moment he walked in happened to be the moment that I was talking to Kevin Garnett on camera. He was like, how on earth am I supposed to compete with that? There's no way. So that was kind of fun.
When you're talking about that story, it reminds me of, I was speaking with Lisa from Colby's Army, as a nonprofit down in southern US, if I remember right. And she talked about basketball players, I think over in Europe, were donating shoes because they needed larger shoe sizes. And you had these basketball players that were donating shoes. And when you're talking about these, I'm just picturing like these huge
they were huge. I mean, it was like, yeah, they were big.
I have to ask, even though I know, people, they grow up career wise and move on, but why did you end up leaving? Did it just because college was done? What happened?
Yeah, just because of the time of life. Like, I was graduating from college at that point. I was actually going to school for ministry at the time. So I got a job at a church as the youth director, and I was moving into my career. The security thing was honestly like just for fun and to make money, and it was great. Like, between there's some nights where I would work like 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. and then not go to sleep, like just go straight there to my first class. And so there were nights where I was doing homework if there was nothing going on, or there were a couple nights I took naps because I had the key to the suites. So sometimes I would just go find one of the suites and sleep on a couch for an hour or so to like sleep, like function, so I could function at school the next day. But it really worked with my schedule, and it was just a super fun, convenient job. It was great. I would not trade it for anything.
That's awesome. We got so much great experience, so many great stories out of that. I love. So let's talk about you as an author, because invariably, so an author, I like to think of it as any other kind of business, essentially.
Right.
No one, more than likely, you're not able to just decide right out the gate you're going to write and you're going to make a bunch of money. You got your salary. Usually you have to kind of work into that. So, and which means you're probably either working full time as well, or part time, or have a partner that's doing that, all kinds of a variety of scenarios.
Right.
What was that like for you? How did you balance your time so that you can make life work while you're starting to get your writing career off the ground?
I have been blessed in that my late husband and then also my current husband, I remarried in 2023, have both worked. And so I was a stay-at-home mom when my kids were little, and writing was the thing that I did in between momming. Momming was my first priority, and then I would write in the middle of that. Or like, I was also, when I first got started, I was a youth director, as I said, and I would come home and write for fun. I really enjoy writing. It's not a chore for me at all. It was like a hobby and something fun. And so I would come home and I would write, like, while my husband was watching TV or whatever, like, just not to kill time, but like that's what I did with my time.
That's interesting, talking about being a mom and trying to write. I was talking to Kristen Williams back in the early stages of this podcast. She was like episode 8 or something like that.
Okay.
But she wrote a book called The Inept Mother, and she talked about basically, being a parent. There's no book for that. Everyone just kind of figures it out. We fake it till we make it, and that sort of thing. But, and this is what made me think of this, she's talking about writing her book on her phone, or ideas on her phone to then come back to later. And any opportunity she had, she was doing that to try to make the balance of momming and work and writing, try to make that all kind of coincide.
That resonates with me a lot. Like I have too many notes on my phone, or like, you get a plot idea and you're like, shoot, I got to write that down before I forget it. So yeah, absolutely.
So I've asked this to other creators as well. I'm going to ask this to you. Do you tend to carry, I'm old school here, notepad and pen where you can jot down an idea real quick, or do you have something on your phone that very quickly you can take those ideas before they're gone? What do you do?
I use my phone, but I feel very naked without a pen in my purse. Like I get mad at myself if I don't have a pen to write with, because I've written poetry and like prose on napkins and paper placemats and all sorts of things when I'm out in public. Like, give me a receipt. I just need some paper. I have asked businesses, like, do you have any scratch paper? I need a piece of paper. Like now, now it's important.
It's going to be gone in a second. I need to get this idea down.
Keep it there. Keep it there. Yeah.
The book you're currently working on, how far into it? When's it going to be published? Where are you in the timeline?
All right. So Prodigal Son released January 1st. And that is my late husband's story, The Prodigal's Son, Crackhead to Jesus Freak. It's not a happy story. It's a hard story, but there is hope and humor laced into it. It took me 7 years to write. I don't know if I said that out loud or just in my head. It took me 7 years, and it started really rough. My late husband was an alcoholic and a crack addict. And when I met him, he was sober. And then he relapsed into alcohol when we first got married. He was sober for 9.5 years, and he relapsed again toward the end of his life. And when he relapsed, he got in a drunk driving accident. They scanned his body for broken bones and bleeding, and they found cancer during that scan. So that was like a Chernobyl of my life just blew up all in a few hours. But that was his story, and he asked me to write it. He was like, I want you to write my story. What are the chances I'd be married to an author whose best work comes from wounds? I want you to interview me, and I want you to help other people with my story.
Wow. Well, you're the second person that I've spoken to recently, and I wish I remembered who the first person was. But I want to say, for my listeners and watchers, go back about maybe 3 or 4 episodes. That's probably the person, and keep hunting until you find the person. But it was that idea of talking to people and capturing their stories, and how important it was, because you don't know, once someone is no longer on this planet, all of their stories go with them. And the
Right.
important thing that this person was talking about was getting these stories and sharing them. And it could be a grandfather, a great grandparent, a mother, a daughter, just get the stories, and was encouraging people to do the same thing. So I'm just inspired by that. And the synchronicity is just really, really cool. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, so the more tragic part of that, I don't know. I mean, every tragedy is unique in its own way, but he was a pastor who relapsed on a Saturday night. So he was supposed to be preaching at 2 different churches that Sunday morning, and he woke up in the hospital instead. And after he was released from the hospital, he was arrested for the felony charge of fleeing police. So it was like a huge fall from grace. It was on TV, like, Methodist pastor, drunk driving accident, like all the papers covered it. It was pretty crazy. And so his heart for other people that went through similar things was like, if God can use a screw up like me, then he can use you. If he can use me, he can use anyone. And he wanted people to know that, like, if they were battling shame or battling addiction or had a family member, like, that was like, just, there is hope. There is hope. There's the possibility of healing, and no one is beyond God's grace, was what he wanted to tell people.
And if I remember correctly, you also do like grief advocating, right?
Yeah, and that came out of this basically. And then my first book was about miscarriage, because I've experienced infant loss as well. So I wanted to write the story in the midst of my grief so that readers would not be alone in theirs. And that was my heart for Love Letters to Miscarriage Moms. That was where I think Clint, my late husband, got the idea to have his story told as well, like to write it in the midst of our trauma so that people would understand, like, it's dirty, it's messy. It's not like gratuitous with profanity, but there is language in there because he wanted it to be authentic and real and show people, like, these are 2 Christians that are like legit struggling and not afraid to show it.
Wow, that is awesome. I absolutely love what you're saying about authenticity. I think that is very trendy right now in a good way. So that is just awesome. Now, unfortunately, I am running out of time, but before I hand the floor over to you, I want to take a second and thank Mickey Mickelson for introducing us. Mickey was in episode 51 as a publicist. Everyone, please go check out that video. Link is in the description. Now, this is the part of the show where I like to offer my guests the opportunity to talk about a project they're working on, a cause they believe in, more about their books. So if there's something specific you'd like to discuss, the floor is yours.
Like I said, Prodigal Son right now has been on the Amazon bestseller list for all month in 3 different categories. So it's doing really well. I'm working on a romantic suspense book right now. It's going to be my debut novel. I'm excited to write fiction because I've been in the hard grief space for so long, and the fiction is going to feel like a break, even though there's like murders and stalkers and stuff. It's going to be great. But that will come out later this year. So if you follow me on my website, loveunedited.com is the website. There's a link tree there, and all my socials there: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, all the things. You can follow me and keep updated with all the things that are going on. And I look forward to what people have to say about the books that I've written. So
that is awesome. I'll make sure to get all those links from you. They'll be on the website, in the description, in the show notes. They'll be all over the place. So when people are trying to find you, they can easily find you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, that'd be great.
It has been absolutely awesome having you on Time We Discuss, where we talked about you as a grief advocate, an author, and working in security.
Thank you so much. It's been great. Thank you.